I know the weight you carry in the hours before dawn, when sleep will not come and the ceiling becomes a vast emptiness that echoes back your questions. I know what it is to sit in a house that once held voices and now holds only their absence. I know the shame that arrives with unpaid bills, the way the body flinches when the phone rings, the exhaustion that comes not from labor, but from pretending you are not drowning. I've walked through seasons where God felt like a word I once knew how to pronounce but could no longer find on my tongue. I speak to you not as one untouched by this darkness, but as one who has tasted its full bitterness and lived to understand its hidden mercy. What I discovered in those barren nights is not a quick cure or a magic prayer, but a narrow path that begins exactly where you stand now, in the truth of your weariness, in the honesty of your doubt. There is a way through this. Not around it, not above it, but through its very center, where something you did not expect is quietly waiting. You believe faith should arrive like sunlight, warm and immediate, flooding the room with golden certainty. You think that if God were real, if you were worthy, you would feel his presence like a hand upon your shoulder, like a voice whispering assurances in the dark. And when you do not feel this, when the silence stretches on and your prayers seem to dissolve into empty air, you conclude that something is broken. Either God has abandoned you or you have failed him so completely that he has turned his face away. Neither is true. I learned this truth in Kenya during a winter so cold that even the stars seemed to shiver in their places. I had lost someone I loved. The grief was not poetic. It was a dull weight pressing against my chest every morning, making each breath an act of labor. I would rise for prayer before dawn, my knees finding the worn rug in darkness, and I would recite the words I had spoken 10,000 times before. But they felt hollow, like coins dropped into a well so deep that no sound returns. I wanted comfort. I wanted certainty. I wanted God to prove himself to me with some unmistakable sign. Instead, I received silence, a silence so complete it felt like a second death. I did not understand then what I understand now, that silence is not God's absence, but his deepest presence. When words fail, when feelings flee, when every familiar comfort is stripped away, what remains is the raw truth of your soul standing naked before the beloved. This is not punishment. This is intimacy of the most profound kind. The winter of the soul is where false comforts die so that true faith can take root. I sat in that silence for weeks, for months. Some mornings I wept. Some mornings I felt nothing at all, only a gray flatness that stretched to every horizon. I did not chase feelings. I did not manufacture hope. I simply remained. I showed up to the prayer rug even when prayer felt like speaking to a wall. I opened the Chido, sacred texts, even when the words seemed like marks on paper, drained of all their power. I breathed in, I breathed out. I counted my breaths like a miser counting coins, because breath was all I had that felt real. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. The body continuing its quiet work even when the heart had gone numb. And slowly, so slowly, I almost did not notice. Something shifted. Not a thunderclap, not a vision, just a small warmth, like the first hint of sun on a winter morning when you are not yet sure if dawn is truly coming or if your eyes are playing tricks. I realized that I had been waiting for God to feel a certain way, to arrive with a certain intensity, to match my expectations of what divinity should be. But God does not audition for us. He does not perform on command. He is already here, in the silence, in the ache, in the space between breaths where nothing happens except the stubborn continuance of life. I learned to recognize his presence not in ecstasy but in endurance, not in miracles, but in the simple fact that I woke each morning and did not give up. There is a teaching I discovered in those dark months, and I offer it to you now. The soul grows strongest in winter. When everything warm is taken away, when comfort becomes a memory, when you are reduced to your essential self with nothing to distract you from your own depths, that is when the real transformation begins. This is not cruelty. This is mercy wearing an unfamiliar face. Let me give you something practical, something you can touch with your hands today. When the panic rises, when the future feels like a locked door and your heart begins to race, do this. Sit down wherever you are. Place your hand flat against your chest, feeling the rise and fall of your own breathing. Close your eyes. Count 4 beats as you breathe in through your nose, then count 6 beats as you release the breath through your mouth. Do this 10 times, just 10. As you breathe, whisper these words, out loud if you can, silently if you must. I am here. God is here. That is enough for now. Do not ask for more than this moment. Do not demand proof or feeling or certainty. Simply acknowledge the 2 facts that are always true. You exist, and you are not alone. The beloved is in the room with you, in the silence, in the space between your heartbeats. He does not need you to feel him to be present. He simply is. This practice will not solve your problems. It will not pay your bills or heal your grief or fix what is broken in your life. But it will give you a place to stand. It will teach you that panic is not the final word, that breath is a form of prayer, and that presence is the foundation of all transformation. What the noise obscures, the silence reveals. Start here. Start with your own breathing, your own heartbeat, your own stubborn decision to remain. This is not resignation. This is the beginning of true strength. I did not arrive at wisdom through purity. I stumbled toward it through mud and mistakes, through nights when I betrayed my own knowing, through mornings when I woke ashamed of the person I had become. There were years when I sought distraction with the hunger of a man dying of thirst, filling my days with noise and movement and the opinions of others, anything to avoid the quiet voice inside that kept asking, "Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when the applause stops?" I ran from that question. I buried it under ambition, under study, under the performance of holiness. I thought strength meant never breaking, never doubting, never showing the cracks. I was wrong about almost everything. The real teaching began only when I stopped pretending and started confessing. When I finally admitted to myself and to God that I was tired of the act, tired of the mask, tired of measuring my worth by how well I could hide my wounds. That was the day the door opened. Not because I had become worthy, but because I had become honest. I remember a night in my youth when I returned to a habit I had sworn to abandon. I will not name it here, because the specific sin matters less than the shape of the shame that followed. I knelt in prayer the next morning and could not lift my eyes. I felt like a fraud, a hypocrite, a man who spoke of God but could not govern his own appetites. The weight of failure pressed against my chest like a stone. I wanted to run from the prayer rug, to abandon the path entirely, to accept that I was not made for this journey. But I stayed, not because I felt brave, because I had nowhere else to go. And in that staying, in that refusal to flee from my own brokenness, I heard something I had never heard before. Not condemnation, but a question. A gentle question that arrived without voice, without words, but with a clarity that made my whole body still. The question was this: do you think your weakness is news to me? Do you imagine that I am surprised by your failure, shocked by your stumbling, disgusted by your humanity? I made you. I know the clay. I know the cracks. I'm not here because you are perfect. I am here because you are mine. I know you carry shame like a second skin. I know you replay your failures in the dark hours, cataloging every wrong choice, every missed opportunity, every moment you wish you could take back. I know the voices that tell you it is too late, that you have wasted too much time, that God has grown tired of your repeated falls and turned his attention to someone more deserving. Listen to me carefully. Those voices are liars. They speak with confidence, but they do not speak truth. I want to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with me and with yourself. When was the last time you allowed yourself to believe that your weakness might be the very place where God wants to meet you? Not your strength, not your success, not the version of yourself you show to the world, but the raw, tired, failing human being you become when you are alone and all the masks come off. If this touches something real inside you, if you recognize this struggle as your own, write in the comments, "I am learning to let God meet me in my weakness." When you share this, You are not just freeing yourself from the prison of pretense. You are lighting a lamp for someone else who is walking in the same darkness, someone who needs to know they are not the only one who stumbles, not the only one who falls and rises and falls again. Your courage to speak truth may be exactly what another soul needs to hear to keep walking. The wound is not the enemy. The wound is the teacher. I learned this slowly, with great resistance, because I wanted to believe that holiness meant becoming invulnerable, that faith meant rising above pain and doubt and fear. But the mystics and the saints, the real ones who walked the path before me, they all carried scars. They did not transcend their humanity. They transfigured it. They let their wounds become doorways instead of walls. I think of Shams, my teacher, my friend, the one who shattered every certainty I held and left me standing in the ruins of my old life. He did not offer comfort. He offered truth. And truth in the beginning feels like devastation. He would look at me with those fierce eyes and say, "You are trying to become holy, but God wants you human. You're trying to rise above your need, but God is waiting in your need. Stop performing. Stop pretending. Stop trying to be the version of yourself that you think will finally earn love. You are already loved. Now the work is to believe it." I resisted this teaching. I argued. I defended my need for control, for achievement, for the spiritual pride that comes from thinking you are better than you were. But life, in its relentless mercy, kept stripping away my defenses. Loss came. Failure came. Humiliation came. And each time I had a choice, to harden and close or to soften and open. I chose, slowly, stumblingly, to open, to let the grief wash through me instead of damming it up, to let the tears fall without judging them as weakness, to speak my doubt out loud instead of hiding it behind eloquent prayers. And in that opening, I found what I had been seeking all along, not the absence of pain, but the presence of God inside the pain. Not the erasure of my past, but the redemption of it. Not the magic that makes everything easy, but the grace that makes endurance possible. Here is what I learned and what I give to you. Name your wounds without making them your identity. Say it plainly in a journal or to a trusted friend or to God in the privacy of your room. Say, "I am angry. I am ashamed. I am afraid. I do not know how to forgive. I keep repeating the same mistake. I feel abandoned." Do not dress it up. Do not spiritualize it. Just say the truth. This is not wallowing. This is honesty, and honesty is the first act of faith. Then, after you have named it, ask God not to remove it, but to meet you in it. Ask Him to show you what this wound is, trying to teach you, what door it is trying to open, what false belief it is trying to shatter. Trust that He is already there, in the center of your ache, waiting with a patience that outlasts all your running. The wound that teaches is holier than the comfort that numbs. I write that in my book, and I write it in my heart. Your scars are not your shame. They are your credentials. They prove you have lived, have risked, have dared to be human in a world that often punishes humanity. Wear them with quiet dignity. Let them make you kinder, softer, more able to sit with others in their pain without needing to fix or judge or flee. This is the beginning of wisdom, to stop running from what is broken and to let brokenness become the place where light enters. There comes a moment on every spiritual path when the ground beneath you simply disappears. All the teachings you memorized, all the prayers you learned by heart, all the certainties you built your life upon, they collapse like a house made of paper in a sudden wind. I have stood in that terrible Kong emptiness, that place where every answer fails and every comfort turns to ash. It happened to me on a night I will never forget. I had been praying for hours, seeking guidance for a decision that felt impossible, and the heavens remained silent. Not the rich silence of divine presence, but the hollow silence of an empty room. I felt abandoned. Worse, I felt foolish. Foolish for believing, foolish for trusting, foolish for building my entire existence on what suddenly seemed like nothing more than wishful thinking and inherited stories. The panic that seized me was not spiritual in any noble sense. It was animal, raw, the terror of a creature who realizes it has been walking on ice that is now cracking beneath its weight. I wanted a sign. I demanded a sign. I bartered with God like a merchant haggling in the marketplace. If you show me just one clear indication that you are real, I will dedicate my life to you completely. The silence grew thicker. My prayers became accusations. Where are you when I need you most? Where are you when faith is not enough and hope feels like a cruel joke? The ceiling offered no answer. The prayer rug beneath my knees was just woven wool, no portal, no magic, no divine telephone. I was alone with my doubt, and the doubt was winning. The heart, when it panics, reaches for anything solid. It wants proof, evidence, a miracle small enough to fit in the hand but large enough to silence all questions. It wants God to show up like a character in a story, speaking in thunderous voice, parting clouds, writing messages in fire. But God, I have learned, does not perform on demand. He does not answer panic with spectacle. He answers it with presence, but presence is subtle, easily missed, mistaken for nothing. I sat in that nothing for what felt like hours. My mind raced through every doubt I had ever suppressed, every question I had dismissed as weakness or lack of faith. What if this is all delusion? What if prayer is just talking to myself? What if the comfort I have felt was only chemistry, serotonin and dopamine, the brain soothing itself with patterns and repetition? What if I am wasting my life on a beautiful lie? These thoughts did not arrive gently. They arrived like wolves, circling, closing in, ready to devour every scrap of belief I had left. I could have run from them. I could have distracted myself, thrown myself into work or conversation, or any of the 1,000 escapes available to a man who does not want to face his own abyss. But something in me, some stubborn core I did not know I possessed, chose instead to stay. To let the wolves come. To let the questions ask themselves fully, without rushing to answer, without defending, without pretending I had certainties I did not have. I began to breathe, not as a spiritual practice, but as an act of survival. 4 counts in through the nose, feeling the cool air enter my lungs. 6 counts out through the mouth, feeling the warm air leave my body. I focused on this simple rhythm because it was the only thing I could control in a moment when everything else felt like chaos. Breath does not require faith. Breath does not care about your theology. It simply continues, pulling oxygen into blood, keeping the cells alive, performing its quiet miracle whether you believe in God or not. And as I breathed, counting each cycle, something shifted. Not dramatically, not with any sense of revelation or divine intervention, just a small shift, like a door that was stuck suddenly giving way to gentle pressure. The panic began to ease. Not because I found answers, but because I found ground. The ground of my own body, my own breath, my own strange and stubborn decision to remain present even in the terror. If these words are touching something deep in you, if you feel this conversation is for your soul, subscribe to this channel. Here, I share teachings for those seeking truth, transformation, and the awakening of the heart. Activate the bell so my words continue reaching you. We are walking this path together, and I do not want you to miss what comes next. A thought arrived, unbidden, unexpected. It was not a voice, and it was not mine, but it had a quality of knowing that my usual thoughts do not possess. The thought was this: what if God is silent, not because he is absent, but because he is listening? What if the emptiness you feel is not abandonment, but an invitation to discover what remains when all the noise is stripped away? What if faith is not certainty, but the courage to stay present in uncertainty? I did not immediately embrace this thought. I tested it, turned it over, examined it for false comfort or wishful thinking. But it would not break. It held weight. It felt true in a way that transcended feeling. I realized, slowly, that I had been demanding God prove himself to me. But faith does not work that way. Faith is not God proving himself. Faith is me showing up, again and again, even when I cannot see him, even when I cannot feel him, even when every rational part of me says this is pointless. Faith is the decision to remain when everything in me wants to flee. This is not blind obedience. This is radical honesty. This is saying, I do not know if you are there, but I will act as if you are, because the alternative is a despair too heavy to carry. The floor steadied beneath me. The questions did not vanish. They are still with me, companions on the journey, but they have taken off their shoes. They have become less like accusers and more like fellow travelers, also seeking, also uncertain, also willing to walk in the dark and trust that dawn will come, even if we cannot yet see it. I learned something that night that has shaped every day since. The crisis of faith is not failure. It is graduation. It is the moment when belief stops being inherited and starts being chosen. When faith stops being a feeling and becomes a practice. When God stops being an idea and becomes a relationship built not on certainty but on commitment. This is the narrow gate. This is where the real journey begins, not when everything makes sense, but when nothing makes sense and you choose to walk forward anyway, one breath at a time, one step at a time, trusting that the path reveals itself to those who are willing to walk it in darkness. Let me give you something to hold. When the panic comes, when the ground disappears and you feel yourself falling into the void, do not fight it. Do not run from it. Sit down where you are and place both hands flat on the earth or on the floor beneath you. Feel the solidity. Feel the stillness. Close your eyes and say out loud or in the privacy of your heart, I am afraid, and I am here. God, if you are real, meet me in this fear. Then breathe. 4 counts in, 6 counts out. 10 cycles, just 10. Do not ask for the fear to leave. Ask instead for the strength to be present with it. Ask for the grace to stop demanding proof and start practicing presence. The fall is not failure, but ground. What breaks you open makes room for light. Remember this, write it on your heart. Where certainty ends, faith begins. Here is the turning point, the moment when understanding must become practice or remain forever, just another beautiful idea that changes nothing. Faith is not a feeling that visits you on fortunate mornings when the sun is bright and your heart is light. Faith is a decision you make with dry lips and tired eyes, a commitment you renew each day regardless of what you feel or do not feel. It is the daily yes given in the darkness, the quiet choice to show up even when showing up feels pointless, even when every emotion in your body is screaming that this is a waste of time. I learned this not through revelation but through repetition, through the slow accumulation of small acts that seemed insignificant in the moment, but became, over months and years, the foundation of a life I could finally recognize as my own. The great secret that no one tells you is this. Transformation does not come from dramatic gestures or sudden enlightenment. It comes from boring fidelity to simple things. It comes from doing what you said you would do, especially when you do not want to do it. This is not glamorous. This will not make a good story at parties, but this is what works. This is what actually changes a human life. Let me give you 3 practices that rebuilt me from the ruins of my own chaos. These are not theories. These are the tools I used when I had nothing else, when all my clever words and spiritual insights had failed me, and I was left with only the question, what will I do today, right now, in this moment, to move 1 inch closer to the life I know I am meant to live? The answer came in the form of disciplines so simple I almost dismissed them, so ordinary I thought they could not possibly matter. But I was desperate enough to try. And desperation, when it meets humility, becomes the doorway to grace. First, conscious silence. Every morning before the world wakes and makes its demands, before you check your phone or drink your coffee or begin the endless list of tasks, you sit. Find a chair or a cushion, somewhere you will not be disturbed. Sit with your back straight but not rigid, your hands resting gently in your lap or on your knees. Close your eyes. Breathe naturally without forcing and begin to count. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 counts, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, feeling your chest expand, feeling life entering your body. Hold for a moment, then exhale through your mouth for 6 counts, feeling the warm air leave, feeling your shoulders drop, feeling the tension begin to release. Do this for 5 minutes, just 5. Set a timer if you must. In those 5 minutes, you do not solve problems. You do not plan your day. You do not rehearse conversations or worry about the future. You simply breathe and notice. Notice the thoughts that arise like clouds passing across the sky. Do not grab them. Do not push them away. Just notice them and return to the breath. Notice the sounds around you, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the birds if you are fortunate enough to live where birds still sing. Notice the sensation of your own body, the weight of it in the chair, the slight ache in your back, the warmth or coolness of your hands. And in the noticing, in this pure attention without agenda, you begin to remember something you had forgotten. You are here. You are alive. And God, whether you feel Him or not, is in this moment with you, in the breath, in the silence, in the simple fact of your continuing existence. Second, small daily order. Choose one space in your life, one room or corner or surface that you use every single day. Your bed, your desk, your kitchen counter, your bathroom sink. Just one. Each day, bring that space into order. Not perfection. Not the order of a magazine photograph or a minimalist Instagram post, just honest, humble order. Make your bed slowly, smoothing the sheets with attention, folding the blanket with care. Wash your dishes as soon as you finish eating, feeling the warm water on your hands, scrubbing each plate until it is clean, placing it gently in the rack to dry. Clear your desk at the end of the workday, putting each item in its place, wiping the surface with a cloth, creating a space that is ready to receive tomorrow. This is not about cleanliness for its own sake. This is about training the will. This is about teaching your hands and your heart that you are capable of completing what you begin, that you can bring order to chaos one small act at a time, that you are not powerless in the face of disorder. The outer order tutors the inner order. When I finally learned to keep my room clean, I discovered that my mind became clearer. When I stopped leaving tasks half-finished, I found that my anxiety decreased. The discipline of caring for ordinary things with ordinary care is a form of prayer that requires no words. It is the body teaching the soul that faithfulness matters, that small things done consistently become great things over time. Third, service or gratitude, each day, one act. Choose before you sleep what it will be the next day, so that when morning comes, you do not have to decide. You simply do. Write a message of genuine thanks to someone who has helped you, even if they do not expect it, even if the help was small. Say a prayer for someone by name, someone you know is suffering, asking not that their pain be removed, but that they find the strength to carry it with grace. Give a piece of bread to someone who is hungry, not with ceremony or expectation of thanks, but simply because they are hungry and you have bread. Forgive one old wound 1 inch, not all the way, not pretending the hurt never happened, but choosing to loosen your grip on the bitterness just slightly, just enough to let a little air into the clenched fist of your heart. Call someone who is lonely. Smile at the stranger in the grocery store. Hold the door. Pick up the trash. Love is not a feeling that descends upon you. Love is a verb with quiet shoes, a decision to act in kindness even when kindness is not returned, especially when kindness is not returned. Do these 3 things for 7 days. Do them when you wake up feeling inspired, and do them when you wake up feeling nothing. Do them when you believe they matter, and do them when you are certain they are pointless. Do them not because they feel good, but because you said you would. This is the discipline of the heart, to train the will, to choose what is true over what is easy, to choose practice over feeling, to choose commitment over convenience. And here is what I promise you, what I learned through years of falling and rising and falling again. Constancy is the language God understands best. He does not need your perfection. He does not need your eloquence. He does not need you to always feel close to Him or sure of Him. He needs your willingness to return, to begin again, to say yes one more time even when yes feels like the hardest word in any language. Where you place your order, God places His grace. This is not magic. This is the mechanics of the soul. The desert learns rain, not through wishing, but through waiting. You are learning to wait with your hands open and your heart willing. This is enough. This is everything. The practices accumulate in ways you cannot measure while you are doing them. The 5 minutes of morning silence seem like nothing on the first day, like an interruption to more urgent matters, like time stolen from productivity. but those minutes gather like drops of water in a vessel. One day you do not notice. 7 days you barely feel. 30 days and something has shifted so subtly that you cannot name it, only sense it the way you sense a change in the weather before the rain arrives. The mind, hunted for so long by its own thoughts, begins to find pockets of rest. The breath deepens without you commanding it. The body, which has held tension like a religion, starts to soften in small places, a jaw that unclenches, shoulders that drop an inch. You catch yourself in a moment of actual presence, not thinking about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow, but simply here, noticing the taste of your coffee, the texture of sunlight on the wall, the fact that you are alive and that aliveness is not nothing. The order you keep in one small space begins to spill over into other areas without you planning it. You find yourself returning the book to the shelf instead of leaving it on the couch. You wipe the counter without resentment. You finish the email instead of leaving it in drafts. These are not virtues in themselves, but they are evidence of something deeper. The will is waking up. For years, perhaps, you have felt like a passenger in your own life, carried along by impulses and moods and the momentum of old patterns. The discipline of small daily order teaches you that you are not only a passenger. You are also, in some measure, a pilot. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the destination. But you can control whether you show up to the cockpit each day and place your hands on the instruments. This changes everything. Not all at once, not dramatically, but truly. I discovered God not only in the burning bush or the mountaintop vision, but in the kettle I washed after tea, in the shirt I folded without hurrying, in the single drawer I organized on a Tuesday afternoon when no one was watching and no one would praise me. He was there, in the small faithfulness, in the quiet care, in the decision to do the next right thing even when it felt like it did not matter. And slowly I began to understand a truth that contradicts all the wisdom the world offers. The extraordinary is hidden inside the ordinary. The miraculous is woven into the mundane. You do not find God by escaping your life. You find him by showing up to it with full attention. The act of daily service or gratitude begins to reweave you into the fabric of the world. For too long, perhaps, you have been isolated, turned inward, convinced that your pain makes you separate, that your struggle is evidence of your uniqueness or your failure. But when you speak a prayer for someone else, when you write a note of thanks, when you offer a kindness without seeking recognition, you remember, you are not alone in this. Everyone is carrying something heavy. Everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see. And your willingness to reach out, even in a small way, even when you yourself are tired, this is the beginning of love, not as sentiment, but as reality. I learned this through letters. There were months when I could barely pray for myself, when my own needs felt too overwhelming to articulate. So I began to pray for others. I would write their names in my journal, people I knew were suffering, people who had asked for prayer, people who had not asked but whose pain I could sense. I would sit with each name for a moment, not saying elaborate words, just holding them in my heart and breathing a simple request. Give them strength, give them peace, help them find the way. And in doing this, in turning my attention away from my own ache toward the ache of another, I found that my own burden became lighter. Not because it disappeared, but because it was shared. Not because I was cured, but because I was connected. The heart that serves even in its own pain is a heart that cannot be destroyed by loneliness. Work began to shift, not through magic, not through sudden windfalls, but through the steady clarity that comes when chaos inside becomes order inside. When your mind is no longer consumed by panic, it can think. When your emotions are no longer running your decisions, wisdom has a chance to speak. I noticed that opportunities I would have missed in my scattered state became visible. Conversations I would have rushed through became doorways. Problems I would have avoided became puzzles I could actually solve. Money, that strange energy that flows where attention goes, began to arrive with more consistency, not because I chased it, but because I stopped repelling it with my chaos. I became someone who could be trusted with responsibility, because I had learned to be responsible in small things. I became someone who could finish what I started because I had practiced finishing the simple task of making my bed each morning. The harvest does not come because you yell at the ground. It comes because you planted in season, watered with patience, and waited with faith. I wrote this in my journal during those months of slow transformation, and I share it with you now. When I ordered my soul, life also ordered itself. This is not a guarantee. This is not a formula. But this is what I witnessed in my own experience and in the experience of countless others who have walked this path. The outer world responds to the inner world, not always, not immediately, but more often than we dare to believe. Relationships began to soften. I learned to apologize well, which means without excuses, without defending, without turning my apology into a weapon. I learned to listen longer than felt comfortable, to let the other person finish their thought before I jumped in with my solutions or my own stories. I learned that silence in conversation is not failure, but respect, a space where the other person can find their own words without my interruption. Anger still came, but it no longer owned me. I could feel it rise, acknowledge it, choose whether to act on it or let it pass like a storm that moves through without destroying the house. This is not suppression. This is sovereignty. This is knowing that you are larger than your emotions, that you can host them without becoming them. The people in my life noticed, not because I announced my transformation, but because transformation does not need announcement. It shows in the way you hold your body, the way you meet someone's eyes, the way you respond to criticism or disappointment. Trust rebuilt slowly, the way a bone heals, with time and care and the body's own wisdom. The signs you seek are often smaller than you expect and more ordinary than you imagine. You want a voice from the clouds, a burning bush, an angel with a message written in fire. But the kingdom enters through keyholes. Grace prefers the back door. The sign might be a morning when you wake without dread, a conversation where you do not need to defend yourself, a bill that arrives and you can pay it without panic, a laugh that surprises you, bubbling up from some place inside that you thought had dried up forever. A moment when you realize you have not thought about your pain for an entire hour because you were absorbed in something that mattered. Do not dismiss these small resurrections. They are not small. They are evidence that life is returning, that hope is rebuilding its nest in your chest, that God has not abandoned his work in you. The discipline is the lamp you keep trimmed and ready. The grace is the oil that fuels the flame. You cannot create the oil. You can only keep the lamp clean, the wick prepared, the container open. This is your part. Keep the morning silence, keep the daily order, keep the act of service or gratitude. When you fail, and you will fail because you are human, you begin again the same day. Not tomorrow. Today. As soon as you notice you have drifted, you return. This is not punishment, this is practice. This is the path walked by every soul who ever learned to live awake. What waiting prepares, rushing destroys. Trust the slow work of God in you. I speak to you now from a different place than where I began. Not because the pain disappeared, but because it transformed into something I can carry with understanding rather than resentment. The losses I suffered, the nights I thought would kill me, the failures that made me question everything I believed about myself and about God, these have become my teachers. I do not say this lightly or with false cheerfulness. I say it as a man who has walked through fire and found that what the fire did not destroy, it purified. What it did not consume, it clarified. I am grateful even for the suffering, not because I am a masochist or because I romanticize pain, but because I know with certainty that I would not be who I am without it. The smooth path teaches you to walk. The rough path teaches you to see. I learned to see in the darkness. I learned to hear in the silence. I learned to stand in the emptiness and discover that emptiness is not nothing. It is the space where everything begins. The moral of this journey is not complicated, though it took me years to learn and will take you time as well. God never left. I left and I returned. I left again and I returned again. And every single time, without exception, I found him waiting. Not with anger, not with disappointment, not with a list of my failures and a lecture about wasted time. He was there with the same patience with which the horizon waits for the sun, the same constancy with which the ocean waits for the river. He did not need me to be perfect. He needed me to be willing, willing to return, willing to try again, willing to show up with my doubt and my fear and my exhaustion, and say, despite everything, here I am. This is the only requirement. This is the only credential that matters. Not your strength, not your certainty, not your flawless record of spiritual achievement, just your willingness to keep walking even when you cannot see the path, to keep breathing even when the air feels thin, to keep loving even when love has broken your heart 100 times. Here is what I learned and what I inscribe in my heart as truth. The wound can teach, the silence can answer, the small can save. These are not slogans to memorize. These are miles I have walked with my own feet, truths I have tasted with my own tongue. The wound is not your enemy unless you make it one by refusing to learn from it, by treating it only as injury rather than also as instruction. The silence is not God's absence unless you interpret it that way. It can also be His deepest listening, His most intimate presence, the place where He waits for you to stop performing and start being real. The small daily acts that seem insignificant, the 5 minutes of breathing, the bed you make, the note you write, these small things compound over time into a life you can recognize, a self you can respect, a faith that can hold weight because it has been tested and it did not break. Let me give you 3 truths to write on your heart. First, silence is also an answer. When you cry out and hear nothing, when you beg for a sign and receive only more quiet, do not assume you have been rejected. Consider instead that you are being invited deeper, past the need for constant reassurance, past the demand for proof, into a trust that does not require evidence because it rests on something older and more solid than evidence. The mystics and the saints, they all passed through this dark night where God seems silent. They all emerged with the same strange report. The silence was not empty. It was full of a presence so vast that words would only diminish it. Learn to sit in the silence without filling it. Learn to wait without demanding. This is graduate-level faith. Second, God does not delay. You are learning to wait. The timing that frustrates you is not punishment or indifference. It is part of the teaching. The seed does not sprout the day it enters the earth. The baby does not walk the day it is born. Everything has its season, its necessary time of preparation, its period of hidden growth that looks like nothing from the outside, but is everything from the inside. Trust the timing you cannot understand. Trust that what feels like delay is actually development, that what seems like denial is actually protection, that the door that will not open today is preserving you for the door that will open tomorrow. Third, what pain did not destroy, it purified. Look back at what you have survived. Look at the losses that you thought would end you but did not. Look at the failures that felt like death but became doorways. You are stronger than you know. You are wiser than you were. You carry scars, yes, but scars are proof of healing, evidence that the body knows how to repair itself, that life insists on continuing even after injury. Let your scars make you compassionate rather than bitter. Let them make you gentle with others who are still bleeding. Let them remind you that you have been through fire and you are still here, still breathing, still capable of hope. Now I give you a practice for the rest of your life. Each morning, before you do anything else, sit for 5 minutes in conscious silence. Place your hand on your chest, feel your heartbeat, breathe with intention. This is your daily yes to God, your quiet declaration that you are still here, still willing, still walking the path even when you cannot see where it leads. Keep one space in your life in order, not as a burden, but as a love letter to yourself and to the divine order that holds the universe together. Do one act of service or speak one gratitude each day. Not grand gestures, simple ones. A prayer, a message, a kindness, a thanks. When you fail, when you forget, when you fall back into old patterns, you do not wait until tomorrow to begin again. You begin again immediately, that same day, that same hour. You say, I am learning. I am human. I am trying. and you return to the practice. This is your altar. This is your offering. Breath, order, service. These three. And the greatest of these, the one that holds the other two, is love. Love not as a feeling, but as faithfulness. Love as the decision to keep showing up for your own life and for the lives of others, to keep choosing the hard, honest, humbling work of being human in a world that often makes it easier to hide. My blessing for you as we close this conversation. May your night remember the language of dawn. May your fear discover it can rest in a hand larger than your own. May your steps, however uncertain, however slow, remember the way home. You are not walking alone. You never were. The beloved walks beside you in every breath, in every small act of faithfulness, in every moment you choose to return. If this message resonated in your soul, subscribe and be part of this awakening journey. Each week I bring wisdom for those who chose the path of true transformation. And leave in the comments, I am learning to trust the silence. This simple declaration marks the beginning of your journey back home, back to yourself.